We're coming to the end of the worst week of slab drilling so far. The placard is 13 weeks. 13 weeks of slab drilling. And there is still nothing that we can do. I apologise to everyone for a morning when I felt very low in mood. The drilling was very bad that morning. I'm feeling much better now. The council have decided to impose something called an assessment, an impact assessment on the works that are being carried out in this block. I'm not totally sure what it means, if in fact it can achieve anything really, but it means that they are aware that this is not a good situation for anyone but the builders and the people who collaborate with the builders. For everyone else, including neighbours on both sides, the party wall neighbours, the tenants that are actually suffering and not enjoying this situation, it's a very bad experience, and presumably this impact assessment will take into account all the various layers of the building programme which is being undertaken by this renovation. The things that I have felt to be a worry: the impact of the slab drilling full time on everyone, the granite that is about to be cut in this block. All of this will be dealt with in this impact assessment. I cannot thank the powers that be in Westminster for launching this impact assessment. I didn't dream that it was possible. I couldn't even imagine that anyone would even care, except perhaps Robert Sale, the environmental health officer, who never seems to stop working on behalf of tenants in Westminster. Like PCSO Lee, an example, an absolute example of what a council worker should be. We had a visit from a noise officer. It was rather difficult because his job was to convince me that the noise meters that the builders had installed carried some weight. I must say he had a difficult job persuading me that the data from these noise meters would have any legal significance whatsoever, except to guard the backs of the builders and Stoneforce managers and residential land and Bruce Ritchie himself. He did take me out and we perused the noise meter outside my block, my flat, and he clapped his hands in front of it and it went on to amber. He clapped again and it went on to red. But I did point out that the noise meters are in the common parts. The builders' noise meters are in the common parts, and they should be situated in the tenants' flats, the tenants and the flat owners' flats. To give him his due, he did try to persuade Stoneforce to allow their meter to be in my flat, which would register the correct amount of noise. The builders are just leaving now, not too happy with my video activities. Stoneforce refused to allow their own meter to be moved into my flat on the grounds that they are paying for the meter. Apparently these meters cost £3,000. So it would be unreasonable of me to expect the council to pay £3,000 a week, I think, for someone suffering from hyperacuity. And I do appreciate that. But I can't help the situation that I find myself in. It's not of my own making. And he was quite taken aback that the meter couldn't actually be moved into my flat. And when I explained what happens when the drills start and the condition that I suffer from, that you start to hyperventilate, your heart rate is going the fastest it can. You can't breathe. You're in such a state that you have almost no memory for the time that the drills are sounding off. He did seem to appreciate for the first time, I think, that this is actually a serious matter, and you're in full fight and flight, and the adrenaline is pouring through you with nowhere to go. You can only turn your anger upon yourself in that situation. And I am in a very, very safe place out of my flat. I did understand that he was trying his best, and I felt less abandoned by the noise team. I feel that somehow they have taken on board that none of this is of my own making, that I'm not being sort of super sensitive or intolerant of the slab drills, that there is actually a social problem that isn't defined by lunacy or poetry or protest placards, but actually a health problem. The levels of dust have been extremely bad this week, and for those of us with respiratory problems, I too suffer from asthma. My neighbour suffers much worse than I do from emphysema. The dust is irksome, and sometimes I catch myself being unable to breathe. But I haven't used the inhaler yet. There is a buffer floor, and the dust is not quite as apparent as it is upstairs. It has been very bad this week. It's been another hard week. The slab drilling focused in flat 16. The tenants had left last Friday, and all the breeze blocks in the skip, which I sent to Twitter and to Facebook, were from flat 16, which explained why the noise was so bad on Wednesday morning. Flat 12, I looked at all the flats last night to see what stage they were at, and flat 12 in my quadrant, 2 floors up from where I am situated, is in the worst state of all the flats. It's still sort of the outer shell, the 4 walls, no structure inside, down to the absolute ceiling of the flat below, which is flat 8, Susan's old flat. So it will be many weeks before the slab drilling stops in flat 12. The lady, who is a lovely neighbour with a little girl, has finally complained to her landlord about the noise that she and her little girl are having to endure. And he arrived this morning, the owner of one of these flats, and the tale he had to tell bore out my own experience of residential land and what it's like to be at their mercy. He had to wait for 2 years, pleading with Bruce Ritchie for the licence to let his own flat, which he had bought from Granger. The other flat is let out to the lady who is pregnant and who has to go to work every day, no matter how tired or how sick she's feeling, because she's certain she cannot stay here. The owner of the said flat that is let out had to wait 2 years, unable to let his flat, with legal fees into the hundreds, just waiting for Bruce Ritchie to issue a licence allowing him to let. It was wonderful to meet this man, and extremely refreshing for him, for us both, to compare our experiences. I do hope that somehow other victims, other tenants, other flat owners will come forward and say what it's like to have experienced residential land at their worst. There must be hundreds of people who have suffered since apparently the Royal Bank of Scotland loaned him £1 billion in 2007 so that he could cut a swathe through the London blocks like this one. So those were two very positive experiences this week, protesting outside the block. There are more cars hooting. I'm reminded of Beep for Brian in Parliament Square. They beep. One bus driver sounded his horn and gave me the rude sign with his fingers. I just wish that I'd managed to catch the bus number, the time, and the number of the bus. I was very, very angry about that, because he was in motion when he was gesturing towards me. The bus was moving. What more can I say? The weather has been wonderful today. It looks as though we've entered a new phase in the building works. We discovered the advertisement for the flat next to me, which strangely is not being renovated. We can only think that this is going to become the office when Bruce Ritchie has managed to get the tenant on the ground floor out sooner rather than later. They're waiting to start work on the ground floor for the two flats behind me that are valued at 1.5 million. It's all about money. It's not about anything else. And I despair when I'm told, just let them get on with it. They'll be finished and they'll be out. Well, what about my life? I'm not able to get on with my life. I haven't been able to get on with my life for very long, since 2007, June 2007, when residential land came into this block and ploughed it into the ground. The argument that residential land are improving the block doesn't mean a thing to me, because the price is too high that we are having to pay. The price is astronomical. I do feel that time probably has been lost from my life. If I work out how many times the adrenaline has pumped through my lung, through my system, I feel that my life has been shortened. I cannot get this across to people, other people here, who can only see that the block is being renovated and improved. The price is too high. far, far too high. Why should we be pushed to the wall so that Bruce Ritchie can make his millions? I don't see why we should have to do that. My neighbours had tried again to pull me back from the lunacy of standing at the front of the block with a placard saying 13 weeks of demolition drilling. And no doubt I am lowering the tone of the block. Their argument that they'll be gone soon. They won't be gone soon. Anytime soon. They're here. The office doesn't move next door to my flat for 3 more months. And that's at the start of the ground floor slab drilling. So I already know it's going to be more than 3 more months. It's probably going to be 6. There's nothing we can do except wait for them to go. I've got to stand at the front of the block for 40 hours a week and try to get the public to understand that they do not have to live like this. A girl came by today telling me in Little Venice how she lives in a Muse home and her neighbour tried to turn a 2-storey Muse home at the end into a 4-storey dwelling by adding a basement and a 4th floor. She's been fighting him since 2010, and I think she was helped only by the Lions Trust, who own the ground rent down there. And some of her neighbour's activities were curtailed only because of this fact. Unfortunately, the Lions charity don't own any land as far up as the Abbey Road. People do try to help with information like this and to let me know that I'm not alone in this and that it's happening all over central London and there's nothing that any of us can do. What more can I say? Thank you everyone for listening and for viewing the videos. We're especially gratified if you have time to look at the poetry. I think the common theme that's predominated this week is why do I not go back into my flat and sit it out? And sit there with my door closed, listening to the slab drilling. I won't do that because that would be giving in. It would be giving the builders the right of way to plunder my life and plough me into the ground. I won't do that. However futile my fight is, however hopeless, at least I'm fighting. I do feel great concern that my neighbours are so worried that I've got to stand in the forecourt, in the middle entrance with a placard, when you know it will be far better for me to be indoors. Slab drilling or no. And with no difference, no discernible difference between the calming periods and the noisy periods. This week, Rob came out of the block when I was talking to the delightful owner of one of the flats that I've mentioned to you all, and he said it's a hellhole this morning. It's hell in there. Now that's what I would have been listening to this morning had I been sat in my flat with my cats. And my neighbours are so concerned about my welfare physically. You know, the arduous task of standing there in the traffic roar for 8 hours, it must be hard on my back. And if I was indoors, I wouldn't be subject to the heat of the day and all the fumes from the traffic. It's very, very difficult to get them to understand that I actually do not want to put myself in harm's way, sitting at home crying about the slab drilling. The reality of that you saw on Wednesday morning, when the slab drilling was at its height in the so-called noisy period. It's far, far better that I fight out here, however hopeless. At least the placard is an absolute good. It's an absolute. It's preserving a kind of peace somehow. It's wonderful when I go in for the 15-minute breaks, the 2 50-minute breaks. My cats seem to know that I'm fighting for their peace and for their home. And they do everything they can to help me. If I need a cat to go into the kitchen, they go in. It's totally wonderful that even cats can help in a situation like this. Barry has been wonderful, sending his letters, sending his faxes, doing whatever he can to help. Outside, I did explain to my neighbours that outside my family, for the whole of my life, and I'm 64, this is the worst thing I've ever gone through. Outside the things that I've experienced, losing my mother, things that have gone wrong down the years, this is the worst thing, because I have no home at the moment. I've just got the front of the block. When they go, the builders finally go, sometimes it's 6:30. I get my home back again, but I'm worn out. There's a brief happiness on Saturday when I go to Barry and Daisy's, and I can record Barry reading his poems. But on Sunday, the shadow falls that I've got another week without my home. It's very difficult to do things that I have to do for my own central heating, which has to be installed. I can't prepare for that because I'm too tired and too worn out by the time it gets to Sunday morning. I just want to relax with my cats, and not much gets done. I managed to read the last instalment of the Margaret poems with Christine Blake last Sunday, because I didn't try to push myself too hard to do things, practical things that need doing, but they do need doing, and I do need to prepare for my own central heating. It's strange that the lesser landlord here, Granger, who have the 4 statutory tenants, that they are considered solely to blame for the situation that we're all in. Granger haven't had any part to play in this. There's nothing that Granger can do. They can't stop Bruce Ritchie, they can't stop the builders. There's nothing they can do. They have at least put a stay on my own installation of gas central heating, which has been very, very helpful to me. They paid for my furniture to still be in storage, which covered the time that I was ill. They didn't need to do that. My furniture is still in storage. And from the beginning of June, from September 2011 to the beginning of June, they have paid for my furniture to continue to be in storage because I've been too physically unwell to deal with its return. So I cannot see how Granger, who did actually renovate my flat, can be possibly blamed in this situation. I find it very, very difficult that Granger are held responsible for any of this. So, I don't know what else to say. The council have imposed this impact assessment, which will involve all the things that I was worried about, and then my neighbours will get to have their say in this assessment. So they have come out to help at the end of the day. Thank God it's Friday.